Hello, our nightmarish creatures. Before the video begins, I would like to apologize. This video was supposed to come out sooner, but unfortunately I had caught a cold that was really bad and, well, my voice gave out. It was so bad I had to basically sleep for about 6 to 8 hours, and, well, that's why the video took so long to get done and put together to feed your appetite for horror. But I honestly hope you enjoy it. If you do, leave it in the comments below. We love to hear from you. I'm still kind of recovering, but I'm still going to work on part 5 for Somewhere Beneath Us, considering everybody else put their best foot forward for that one. Anyway, hope you're having a wonderful weekend. And, well, time to enjoy tonight's creepy tale. I think I was around 6 years old when I started to notice something felt unusual about our family home. My parents told me we had moved when I was a baby, so it's been the only place I recall as being home, but it never quite felt right. I would go to friends' homes after school or at weekends for birthday parties, and the atmosphere just felt so different in comparison to when I was home. There hung an air of what I would describe as an oppressive malevolence in our home. As a child, it felt like fear, and I remember trying to articulate this cloying, crushing, almost sinister presence to my parents all those years ago, but it was casually disregarded as an overstimulated child's imagination. As I grew older, I felt a greater sense of unease at home and found myself staying out with friends, doing whatever I could to prolong my time away before I had to come back. The feeling of anxiety and paranoia would rise back to the surface the closer I got to home. You see, it felt like I was being watched, like there was something in the home monitoring my every action. This wasn't my parents could walk in at any moment, teenager level of paranoia. No, this was hair standing on end, goosebumps, fight or flight instincts kicking into overdrive, as if my body and mind were sounding the alarm to get out, run. But after searching every room on several occasions, there was never anything out of place. I continued to raise my concerns with my parents, but it fell on deaf ears. They chalked it up to me acting as teenagers typically do. They had bigger issues, as I could see the cracks starting to show in their marriage, eventually becoming all-encompassing as arguments ruptured around the home and their relationship began to crumble, all while the ever-present feeling of malevolence continued to hang in the air. As time went on, their relationship completely broke down. My mother had become a recluse, quit her job, and spent most days locked away in the spare room, only emerging to get food, with barely any acknowledgement to mine or my father's existence. My father had become bitter and distant, a hollow shell of his former self, except for the infrequent outbursts of emotion swaying from anger to desperate pleading whenever he and my mother crossed paths in the kitchen. The strange thing is, during this time, the house felt almost normal. The dread and paranoia I had felt before had almost disappeared, but had been replaced by the anguish that comes with being in the middle of a family falling apart. It didn't last too long though, as my mother stopped emerging from the spare room entirely, and the silence in the house was frequently punctuated with the thunderous knocks of my father's fists on the spare room door, followed by his pleas for my mother to come out and eat, then the sorrowful sobbing of a broken man heading back to his room. I hated it. I hated being in the middle of it all and seeing the people I loved, my parents, my world, crumbling away, all while I wasn't even a ping on their radar. I felt invisible. In such a short space of time, my father became completely disparate, barely registering my presence despite my protests. My mother hadn't been seen for days, and he stopped knocking on her door. I tried knocking myself, pleading with her to come out and eat, but was met with silence each time. After several attempts across multiple days, My father screamed at me to leave her alone.
Just leave her alone. She don't want to come out, she don't want to come out.
1 week had passed, and it felt like time had come to a standstill in the house. My father stopped going to work, and like my mother, had started to confine himself to his bedroom too. The air felt stagnant, and the silence was almost suffocating. I spent a lot of time out of the house, seeking solace in my friends and their families, too ashamed to admit what was going on at home, diverting questions over lunch to other topics of conversation. I was not prepared for the 8th day. I woke up in the middle of the night and immediately felt it, the rising dread, the pervasive feeling of being watched. My throat tightened and my pulse began to quicken as fear grasped my mind like an iron vice. I felt like I was 6 again, unable to truly convey and comprehend the internal terror I was going through, my fight or flight instinct screaming. I tried to force the feelings back and put my pillow over my head, but my mind was racing, and the surging feeling that something sinister didn't want me to sleep was destroying any chance of me getting rest. I decided to get up and see if going outside would help clear my mind. It was only after I climbed out of bed and my eyes adjusted to the darkness that I noticed a smell. There was a rancid, foul stench in the air, like rotting food left in the sun to fester in the heat. I accidentally took a breath, and the smell clung to my throat, causing me to cough in wretched disgust. I grabbed a nearby shirt and put it over my mouth and nose to act like a makeshift mask, but it was of minimal effect against the invasive stench. I went into the hallway to see if I could try and figure out the source of the foul odor. I noticed the doors to both the spare room and my parents' room were open. I yelled my parents' name into the darkness, but I was met with silence. So I cautiously walked down the hallway to the spare room first to see if my mother was still there and was simply in a deep sleep. As I got closer to the room, my hair began to stand on end as the feeling of dread became more and more intense. I reached the doorway, peered into the dark, and was hit with an even more intense odor. Rotten food. No. Rotten flesh. I reached for the light switch, fumbling in the darkness to find it, half choking on the smell, which was seeping through my makeshift mask. I managed to find the switch and the room was bathed in light, illuminating the true horror before me. She, my mother, was in the wall. Her body had become fused with the wall of the house, contoured and crumbled as if she was being slowly devoured. Her face, and what remaining limbs could be seen protruding, were gaunt and pale, her cheeks sunken and eyes hollow as if all moisture had been drawn from her. Her face held an expression of pure anguish, misshapen and stretched into a ghastly visage violently screaming without the sound. Tears clouded my view as I fell back into the hallway, and a wave of nausea hit me. My mind couldn't comprehend the horror I just saw. That was my mother, who only a few days before was fine. But now... I righted myself, pushing back my unraveling thoughts, and tried to regain my composure. Whatever happened here was not natural, and the being or entity that caused it may still be present. A chill ran down my spine as the next thought slipped into my mind. Father! I turned around and walked further down the hallway to my parents' bedroom and was met with the same disgusting smell. My heart sank as I reached for the light switch. He was on the floor, but only half his body was visible, for anything below his waist was scattered in the walls. I looked up to the ceiling and saw viscera and rotten flesh poking out of cracks above. What was once a magnolia room was covered in dark red and brown stains, with scraps of flesh and shards of bone poking out of the walls. His neck was craned at an inhuman angle, forcing his head to look towards the ceiling, and like my mother, he was holding an expression of pure contorted agony. My mind was on the brink of collapse. I turned to leave the room when I saw he had one outstretched arm appear to be pointing to something on the floor. I looked over from the doorway, paralyzed with fear and unable to convince my body to move closer. I managed to make out what looked like a message scratched into the floor under his bloody fingernails.
Burn it all before it feeds.
I didn't have to be told twice. Adrenaline surged through my body, shaking me free from the shackles of fear and driving me into action. I rushed back into the hallway and headed downstairs to the kitchen. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, the air felt heavy, and the feeling of being watched became ever more pervasive. My heart was racing, and I could swear I could see the walls rippling and undiluting, but each time my eyes tried to focus on a particular point, all I could see was darkness. It felt like whatever this entity was, it was becoming aware of my plans, and as I reached the kitchen, my body started to slow down. I was feeling drained, both emotionally and physically, my mind crumbling under the stress and all I had seen, my body fighting back the waves of nausea and the cycles of adrenaline surging and dumping, causing my muscles to cramp. Through my ad-lib mind, it was starting to make sense. Whatever this thing was, it influenced and fed on emotions, breaking people down enough to feed on them physically, and I was running out of energy and time. I took advantage of another wave of adrenaline and ran to a kitchen drawer, frantically fumbling in the dark until my hand clasped around a box of matches. I struck several matches, setting fire to the curtains above the kitchen sink. The flames began to slowly crawl up the curtains and spread to the nearby cabinets on the wall. A blood-curdling shriek reverberated around the house as the flames started to engulf the walls and smoke plumed across the kitchen ceiling. The walls started to pulsate violently, and I could hear the foundations creaking and feel it rumbling beneath my feet. The shriek kicked my fight-or-flight drive fully into flight, and I ran out of the kitchen into the main hall towards the door. The walls shook more violently the closer I got to the door, and the mix of smoke and rancid rotten flesh caught in my throat, making me almost vomit. But I managed to compose myself and reached the front door. My hands were on the handle when I heard a voice from behind me.
"Where are you going, my love? It's late, and your father needs you."
My mind nearly faltered, but I pushed the door open and ran outside to hear a scream of anger erupt from the house. Whatever this being was, it wanted me to stay and perish with it, but I ran down the street and didn't look back. My life as I knew it was over, and I had to start again somewhere new. After all, who would believe me if I told him what happened that night? I still get nightmares about what happened several years later. I looked online at the local newspapers, and it was determined to be a horrible accident. A tragic fire killed a family of 3, with no suspected foul play. The emergency services who attended the scene couldn't recover all the bones of the bodies. They had chalked it up to the remains being scattered and buried in the debris as the house collapsed in the fire. The reason I wrote all this is to serve as a warning. If you ever visit somewhere and you don't feel right, like someone is watching you and your brain and body are screaming out, telling you to run, listen before it's too late.